Alright, well, if you're new to the channel and you don't know already, this is actually a communist channel, and as such, it is also an anti imperialist channel. And the way that I like to resist imperialism is by ignoring it. That means you, United States of America, and your fucking elections. Um, so in the last video, I kind of outlined a few principles for trying to, define what critique is, what criticism means as a mode of thought. I was speaking in a pretty abstract register, just trying to, again, give a few basic principles that we can use to, unify a diverse array of critical thinkers, whatever you might think of the practice of the thinkers that I gave in the previous video, Kant, Marx, and Roger Ebert. The point is not to, put any kind of judgment about whether or not what they're doing is good or bad, or like any kind of qualitative assessment of the style of criticism that they do, um, but rather just to try to demonstrate how there are principles, fundamental principles at play in the type of thought that they do, and it unifies a very diverse set of practices. So in this video, I'm going to be talking more about a particular methodology of criticism and trying to explain like what methodology means in this context. We've been talking about criticism as separating things out and looking at how things relate to like an overall system in which they find themselves. So in Kant, we were talking about how his basic object is a representation, which is the basic object of thought in the representationalist framework. It's like the kind of most fundamental unit of cognition. And from there he looks into a representation, sees what it's made of, and then also looks at how it relates to other cognitions or other representations, cognition as like an ongoing process, and is able to distinguish like a big array of categories and faculties, and that is how he arrives at his system, his transcendental system. It's through critique. It's through separating things out, seeing how they relate to each other, seeing how they fit within this overall field. And the field that he's working in is epistemology. He's talking about knowledge, and he's talking about how the mind works, how thought works. So he has his object, and he's relating it to a specific a specific context, because I mean obviously you could take the same basic unit as him, a representation. Representation being, again, just to repeat myself from last time, it's like an impression made on the mind by phenomena that we are assuming, we're granting for now that they exist outside of the mind. So something happens outside of you, and it's like has leaves an impression on your mind. That's the kind of basic framework that all of these modern philosophers, I mean, at least the majority of them, are working in. And Kant, he's working in the framework of epistemology, so he's relating that unit representations to a specific set of things, all of the things that are going on in the mind, because he has the goal, a specific goal of like systematizing cognition itself, systematizing pure reason. That is what the title, the critique of pure reason, is supposed to be a critique employed by pure reason. It's supposed to be a critique of the overall system of pure reason. It's a double entendre. So there, you could like relate that same basic object that Kant used, the representation, to a different set of things. And in fact, he does. He does metaphysics. He does ethics. He does aesthetics. but for in the critique of pure reason, he's working within a specific field. So the thing that I want to expand on is like what that fields is, like where it comes from, how we are getting that. And the reason that we need to think about this is because there are a myriad of critical approaches that we might take. It is not enough to simply define a set of abstract principles that pertain to all critical approaches, but now we have to settle on what critical approach we're going to take. And we have to, I have to, for the purpose of this video, like uncover what it is that allows there to be a variety of critical approaches. And it's because there are a variety of contexts that you can relate any given object to. So if we take an example that I think will be easier to understand, like a film or any kind of cultural object, we can approach it. There are so many different critical approaches. Like feminism is an important one. Post-colonial or decolonial criticism is also very important. And these are just ways of looking at an object like a film and seeing how it relates to, in the example of feminism, to like the status of women in society, or the social being of female subjects, either historically or in contemporary society, whatever. The idea there is you take the object and you're choosing to relate it to a specific limited set of things. You're not relating it to every single thing, because that would be just like too much. It would make for an incomprehensible film critique. It would just be meaningless, really. It wouldn't make any sense. But if you take a film and think about it in terms of how it reflects the social status of women, how it perhaps argues for how women's status in society today is unjust, or how it offers some kind of emancipatory vision, or how the film reflect, like in film history, something that is very easy to do is to watch old movies and see how like the way women are treated in these old movies is a reflection of how women were treated in society generally at that time. And then you can compare it to today and see how the status of women has changed over time. But I don't want to talk about feminism or the feminist approach, because as important as that type of scholarship is, it is not what motivated this whole series of videos. And what motivated it is the sociological approach to looking at objects, like a film, for example. And I spoke about this quite extensively in my review of the Michael Baxandall book, but I guess it bears repeating because I'm trying to expand on it, whatever. So basically the idea here in the social history of art, or in really the social history of any cultural phenomenon, is to look at the social forces that determine whatever it is that you're looking at. So we'll stick with films and take something like the invention of sound recording in films. That was a huge thing that occurred, I believe, around the beginning of the 30s, and it completely radically transformed the filmmaking industry. There's a really hilarious example in the movie Singing in the Rain, if you've ever seen that. One character is making she's an actress, and she's making the transition from silent movies to talkies, and she's having a really hard time because her voice is really unpleasant to listen to. She has a really high-pitched voice with a very pronounced New York accent, which makes the transition from one period to another very difficult for her. And the point here is that the invention of this technology of recorded sound, of recorded dialogue, dramatically changed the types of movies that were being made. It dramatically changed performance style and the style of film overall. Obviously, it's very difficult to conceive of films nowadays. There's some people who make silent films nowadays, but like in with modern technology or whatever. But obviously, like sound recording has become fundamental to how we understand filmmaking, and it was a technology that came about through like people doing things, working to invent a certain thing, and then it came about as a result of social forces. It didn't just come out of nowhere. The camera itself came. It was, and all of photography and filmmaking was a result of social forces. So the idea here is, again, just to restate that social forces play a role in determining how style develops, how art and the medium, whatever medium in question, develops over time. And yeah, and like this method of looking at how these social forces affect style and cultural phenomena more generally, like we don't have to simply talk about it in the context of art objects, but we can extend this critical approach to any kind of social phenomenon, any kind of thing that happens in society. You can look at it and see how it is the determinant object of some process of social forces interacting and evolving over time and creating the conditions of possibility for whatever it is in question. Something on the lens. No, that's just an icon. Sorry. So the reason that this particular critical method is very popular with Marxists is, I mean, it should be obvious, is because Marxists like to talk about society and the material forces of society, and it's very easy to understand this critical method in terms of the base superstructure dialectic. As I said in my review of Painting Experience in 15th century Italy, he was a very important innovator in the field of the social history of art, Michael Baxandall, but he was not a Marxist, and he never used the terms base and superstructure, but those terms allow us to very easily understand what's going on here, and it should be really obvious why Marxists might be drawn to this particular critical method. It's because they like looking at society, they like looking at like material things in general. So yeah, I guess that's all that I wanted to say for this video. Everything that I can recall, at least. Yeah, so that's just a little bit of a gloss on what the sociological method of doing criticism, the sociological approach to criticism is supposed to be. And in tomorrow's video, we're going to be looking at another approach to doing criticism, the formalist method. But that's all for today, and do I have anything to say regarding the election? Well, I know everybody on this channel voted for Kanye West, so that's good for you, and good luck with that.